and welcome to another special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interviews. Today we have a very special guest. She is a lifelong baseball fan, player, coach, and now she is a member of the St. Louis Cardinals organization as a part of their fourth coach program. The one and only Tina Whitlock. Christina, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you, Lee and Ray, for having me on and giving me the opportunity just to share about my experience.
Of course. We want to, obviously, there's a lot going on with baseball right now as everyone's going back reporting to training camp and things are starting to get underway. Hopefully, fingers crossed with the season as we're all dealing with, of course, with the pandemic. But before we get into that, we want to talk to you about yes, like you said, your experiences and how you got into and even explain what is this fourth coach program that the Cardinals started a few years ago, maybe, and how you got involved with the organization.
Well, the fourth coach position is kind of a hybrid coaching position. It allows for a young coach or old coach, in my case, to get out on the field and, be part of the defensive makeup and hit fungos and be in the bullpen, maybe working with some of the technology, but also gives them the opportunity to throw BP and also then scout between once we take the field. So it's a hybrid position between actual coaching and scouting.
Oh.
And while I was at spring training, had the chance to go to scout school and just to learn a little bit more about scouting at the professional level. I'd done some amateur scouting and bird dog scouting, but needed to get to the pro level now.
That's very cool. So what kind of differences did you notice once you started learning more about scouting than just being a coach? Like, talk about the work balance and how they differ, because obviously there's a lot of analysis in both coaching and scouting, but obviously I think you're working more with the players and when you're working more with the front office. Talk to us about balancing the coach scout responsibilities.
Well, we had just gotten started, so we were just getting introduced to being able to do both at the same time. But what I had learned from the other coaches that had done a fourth coach position was it was pretty exhausting, and that there really was not a balance. I mean, it was all about trying to find a routine and understanding that it was going to be pretty time consuming. So balance in sports and in any type of industry that requires you to make a commitment and something that you're passionate about, really, is there truly a balance with that? But honestly, we were just getting started and really had not had a chance to get on the field to truly coach through an entire game or scout through an entire game. So we were just getting started.
I want to jump in here because like I feel like we're about to reach where we're going, and I want to rewind a bit.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear about like that experience too, about even when the shutdown happened, because like I said, this is something you've been waiting for your whole life. And actually, from what I've read, I loved your attitude of like, hey, look, I've waited a long time. I can hold on a little bit longer. There's a reason for this. But let's rewind back, because you were an All-American. You won an SEC championship with the Gamecocks, right? You've been to a World Series. You were a U.S. national player, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I trained with Team USA for 3 years and was fortunate to be chosen to go to the Pan Am qualifier down in Medellin, Colombia.
Yeah, so that's no small feat to be able to represent your country in any way. All right, one of my dreams is to someday hopefully represent our country in hockey in some form, whatever that becomes. It's not going to be a player anymore. I've accepted that a long time ago. But I want to talk about this because when someone like you, an athlete, succeeds like that, there is, I find, a flame, there's a drive, there's a passion that sets not you aside from other people, but pushes you a little bit more, right? You don't just become an All-American. You don't just get where you're at. So what is the driving force? What was that motivation that I'm sure you had at a young age that started you on the path that you're on now?
Well, when I first started playing baseball back in my youth, I just enjoyed getting lost in the game. And the game is very magical, and I wanted just to be able to play in that space for as long as I could. And in order to advance in this game and play as long as you can, you have to get better. And you have to be consistent in many areas. And I was an undersized player, so that meant I had to be as technically sound as possible. And that also meant that I had to enjoy the grind of really truly repping out whatever skill it was that I wanted to perform. And I fell in love with that part as well. The repetition, the grind, the satisfaction of just putting in a long day's work at the ball field. And then obviously the competition piece, I think, just enjoying competing, whether it's against the game or competing with your teams or your comrades or against the competition.
Yeah, I always joke that there's nothing more American than baseball, and there's nothing more American than healthy competition for lots of reasons. One of the things that I love about that story is that you talked about, you get lost in the game. And I think anyone that plays to a high level knows exactly what you're talking about. Another thing you brought up that I wanted to touch on, and this is something I deal with when I'm coaching players, is it's always important to be a well-rounded athlete in whatever sport you're playing. No coach is going to deny that. But you recognize your strengths and weaknesses, it sounds like, pretty early, and you triple down on your strengths. And I think that that's a really important and undersold aspect that specifically younger athletes, not too young, but, once you get to the kind of high school, collegiate level, if you can excel at something, like, so in hockey, it would be like digging the puck out of the corner boards. It's just not a skill that everybody has. Or in baseball, power hitter, or you have fast runner. In football, football's positions are a little bit more obvious for obvious reasons, but, your 3-pointer or your layup person, can you talk as a coach to the audience about, when you're good at something, how to triple down on that, but also how not to forget about everything else?
Well, for me, I like the athleticism part. So, not just performing a skill in the game, right? But the athleticism it took. I enjoyed running. So that meant I practiced running. And I think there's a lot of people that can't get past running, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't enjoy running.
Not going there.
Two of the 3 people here don't enjoy running. I can tell you that right now. Skating, maybe one of us, but yeah.
I labor a lot more now than I used to, but I enjoy that. I think that if you're going to advance or truly develop your athleticism, you have to find a way to enjoy the things you dislike. And I think that we get stuck a lot of times as young people, as in our development process, of not really truly understanding what that looks like. Currently, or prior to coming to the Cardinals, I worked with a gentleman and we worked in youth development, and we would look at the skills and, let's say, for example, range. And we would look at an athlete and see that he might be struggling with range. Well, a lot of people might go out there, just hit him some more ground balls and make him just, try to have a more of a quicker response, or to anticipate a little bit better, which anticipation is great, but learning how to teach, a young athlete how to anticipate, or look at the flexibility piece of this. Does this young man need to develop some flexibility? So being able to look at the different reasons or the root of the cause why range might be impacted. So I think if you're going to double down on anything, you got to look at your athleticism and how that plays into you executing a skill.
Absolutely, that's a great answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no. So you mentioned the Cardinals. How did you get involved with them? Like, did someone reach out to you? Did you apply for this? How did that process come about?
So about 2.5, 3 years ago, Major League Baseball had reached out through Tyrone Brooks, who is in the diversity and inclusion program. And at this time I was coaching in development, and I was coaching baseball, youth baseball here locally in Columbia, South Carolina, but I also was coaching with the British national team. And Tyrone had called me and he had asked me if I was interested in opportunity. He had seen my resume and thought that maybe baseball could have a door for me. And when I spoke with him, I didn't know really what questions to ask, because as much as softball has grown, and I'm so proud of the fast pitch community for what they've done, it's still very small in comparison to baseball on the world scale. There's so many more levels and so many opportunities. So really clarifying what opportunity meant, I still had to think about what that looked like. And so Tyrone and I talked, and I told him after I got back from the World Games that I would consider it, and I was going to pray about this and make sure that this was really an avenue that I wanted to research and, see if it was right. And I had confirmation. And so I turned in my resume and was chosen with, I think, 30 or somewhere between 30 and 50 girls, or not sure, 30 and 50 women, I'm sorry. So many of them were much younger than me. So that is a compliment to all the young women that were coming through the program as well. But we went out to the winter meetings, and for a period of 2 to 3 days, we were trained in the different fields, whether it's coaching, scouting, athletic training, strength and conditioning, analytics, all of that. And through this program, then we were introduced to opportunities to network while we were there at the winter meetings, and basically kind of given a roadmap of how we can start building our foundation to get into Major League Baseball. And many of the women were very successful from this program. And my process took just over 2 years. I went back last year to the winter meetings and just continued to network. And it was funny because before I went to the winter meetings, I actually had just gotten a call several weeks prior with the Cardinals to interview. And through a gentleman by the name of Charles Peterson, who is a special assistant scout and who was also a colleague of mine and gave me the opportunity to do some bird dog scouting. I had gotten my resume in, and 7 rounds later, it just seemed like it just kept going, to the next level. And when I landed in San Diego, I had gotten a phone call. Actually, my phone had been on airplane mode, and they had been trying to reach me to be able to offer me the job. And so it was pretty exciting process, pretty lengthy process. Bill Gavette, who was with the Colorado Rockies for years, he actually wrote a book called Do You Want to Work in Baseball? And he had shared with me that the process was going to probably take 2 to 2.5 years or so to really network the system and understand what it was going to be about.
Wow.
Could you look? We always joke about this. Ray and I, we were trained classically in broadcasting. You're never supposed to ask someone, "How did you feel?" Right? How did you feel? But I mean, can you even possibly describe the emotions that went through you when the St. Louis Cardinals organization are offering you a job? And I want to be clear: this isn't a question directed at you being a woman. This is just a baseball coach getting a job with the St. Louis Cardinals. Like, what can you walk us through that? Did time stand still? Did it go too fast? What was that like?
Well, you know what? I actually made up my mind before I submitted my resume. What do you want to do if they offer the job? Because you're not going to submit a resume and then turn it down. That's not, yeah. If I'm going to commit to something, I'm doing it because that's what I want to do. So I actually had in my mind played that out ahead of time. I choreographed that this is how it's going to be. And when I received that actual offer, while I was in San Diego, I was by myself. So it was a moment of just like, yes, of just confirmation that here I am at 45 years of age, making a career transition, and that it was the right decision. I have absolute peace, and I have just a wonderful feeling of direction right now. And the St. Louis Cardinals, everything about the process with them was first class. And I cannot ask for a more pleasant experience through my interview process. It was very personal in the sense of being able to speak freely about how I operate, how their program operates, and it just was a great fit.
That is fascinating. And it sounds like a skill too that you learn by playing baseball. I do want to ask this question. It's kind of a 2-part question, right? So there's glass ceilings here, right? So there's the obvious glass ceiling of being a female coach in professional baseball at any level, right? But I always try and express, my wife is a trailblazer, and like we work with a lot of NWHL teams, which is the professional women's hockey team in another organization that I run. And I try and stress to people that, yes, it is women, but the other glass ceiling is not you're a female coach in baseball. It's just people looking at you as a coach in baseball, period. The gender has nothing to do with it. So you're trailblazing no matter what here, right? So what is the responsibilities with that? Is that something you think about? Is it an afterthought? You're just going for it? And, do you think about the legacy that this leaves for again, not just women, but everyone in the future of professional baseball and baseball in general?
You know, I'm very fortunate that I have not run into some of the situations that I know other women have faced. And I can say that many women that walked before me through these many paths have probably made my path a little easier. So I'm very grateful for those women for doing that. And for me personally, I played baseball in high school. It was one of the most hormonal times in a person's life, right? And
Yeah.
I remember during that time, the head coach, Coach Smith, he actually also was Dave Roberts' coach. So we had actually trained together in San Diego as youths. And, you know, he treated me just like an athlete, and he expected me to reach my capacity as well as the fellas that were out there. And, you know, like we had such a mutual respect for one another. And we created this great environment where it was iron sharpens iron. And it was all about making sure that we made each other better. And it was really a great environment. So from that, I just pressed on wanting to be environments, find environments, create environments like that, to where it was all about the goal and nothing else. You know, and I think I've been very fortunate that that's occurred. Now, as far as being a trailblazer and all that, I think it's fabulous because, and not just for me, but all the women that are trying to do these new things and have been given these opportunities to do things, because right now we get to do a great job and set the standard and the foundation of how it's going to look like. And I know one other opportunity I feel that prepared me was, in 1997, it was the first year of the SEC conference and for women's fast pitch, and South Carolina won it. And so I was very fortunate to be on this team with these amazing women who shared the goal of getting, winning in the first ever SEC championship. We wanted to set that foundation and say, you know, this is what SEC softball is going to be like. And look at where it's at now. So I look at that opportunity as well. And it's like, if you're gonna be foundational, you know, make sure you do a great job.
Awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I don't know how to follow that up, but yeah,
I'll follow it up if you need, bud.
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, you go right ahead. Yeah.
No, you know, again, phenomenal answer. I love hearing these stories. I love hearing how you conquered these walls. You know, one transition we have to make here is we do actually have to ask you about baseball right now.
Yeah.
No matter where you are in the ranks, I mean, you're a baseball person, so we have to ask you about baseball. I mean, first off, let's just start with the obvious. I mean, you're in Juniper, Florida, and they tell you go home. We're stopping. I mean, what was that process like? I mean, was it expected? Did you kind of see it coming, or was it really out of nowhere?
You know, you don't want to think the worst, right? You go home thinking it's just going to be a long rain delay, right? Honestly, and nobody else knows this. So I haven't even unpacked. I've kept everything in my bag, ready to say, let's go, whenever. I didn't even unpack. So I've just stayed optimistic that, you know, at some point there's going to be a call, you know, and if that call comes, you know, you're ready. And I think that's very important, is just to stay ready. And, you know, most coaches have, you know, been former athletes. And so they've practiced that staying ready.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I like what you said there, because I think that's a common thing among top level coaches and athletes, is you are just ready to go. And look, being a professional coach at any level of professional sports, from the bottom to the top, is not an easy life all the time. A lot of people think it's glorious, and there are times that there are glory. But I mean, I remember being on the bus for 15 hours, you know, going to a game. And then, you know, when you win those games, it's okay. When you lose those games, it's a 50-hour bus ride home, even though it takes 15 hours, if you know what I mean.
Because you know you're going to hit like traffic or something along the line.
Yeah. Just something goes wrong. So obviously they shut it down. I love what you said about being ready to go, but then you had to watch pretty much from the outside, the owners and the players quarrel, for lack of a better word. And again, we've talked a lot about this on the show, keeping in mind that Ray and I pretty much have a fan perspective on this. We don't work in the game. We've never been close to it professionally as you. I mean, someone involved in the sport, I mean, how do you approach when you see CBAs and owners and players arguing about millions of dollars, understanding that, the people watching at home don't make that. And I think the players know that too, you know what I mean? But what is that process like for you, having to watch them go back and forth?
Well, we live in a time where we try to create transparency in a lot of different areas. So everything seems to be public, right? And, and especially during negotiation process, it seems like everybody wants somebody to choose a side, right? Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. And for me, I personally decided to use this time to understand the process from the players union side, called up some former players. Hey, what is this? What is this about? Like, I learned that the minor leaguers weren't part of that, and kind of the structure of it. And then trying to understand from the owner's side and the business side of things. And, because it is a business, it's a performance, based business. And sure, there were a lot of things that were perceived maybe negatively and some that were perceived positively. I personally like the fact that we are where we are now, and that they worked through all of it and we are making something happen. And for the conditions and the circumstances, things are probably as ideal as they're going to get at the moment. And hopefully that through this, there'll be some really good things that come on the heels of this, whether it's, at the end of 2020 or in 21, 22. I truly believe as you move through these challenges and sometimes these tragedies, there's a lot of good that's on the other side. And I think, looking at how everything played out, we're at least heading in a direction of playing ball.
That is a great answer for so many reasons. One, I loved that you said that you utilize that time to the maximum potential to learn. It's funny. Now I'm going to sound like a nerd here for a second, but I've studied NHL CBAs because I was in the business for a bit. And I was fascinated when I dove deep, and I will spare everybody the research in the 20-page paper that I wrote about this. But I was fascinated when I dove into it because it's not at all like it looks. And like you said, people feel like they have to pick a side, when the truth is this. Both of those sides have to work together to get to the end result. There's no solution where one side wins, because if one side wins, everyone loses technically, right? It depends on the issue, but when you dive into contract negotiations and ownership negotiations and all these things, there's so much that goes on with it. And again, knowledge is power, right? And that's exactly what you took that opportunity to do. So I find that fascinating. So now we're catching up now. This is what I wanted. Now we have a 60-game season on our hands. Yes. I'm not going to lie to you, Tina. Ray doesn't even know this. I'm from Philadelphia, huge Phillies fan. All right, have been my whole life. And they are playing an inter-squad game tonight. And I watched a lot of it tonight on Facebook, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's like, here's the thing. This is what I'm realizing. I'm starting to realize how ready I am for anything sport-related at this time. Because I would never watch that normally. Like, I don't watch those games when we're not in a pandemic. And I'm watching, I'm just really intently like, when's Bryce Harper coming up? Bryce Harper, it's the only pitcher I know about. And I'm like, wow, I really need this more than I thought I did. Because I tend to kind of push those things aside. If like when there was no baseball, my attitude is like, I got to keep focusing on what I focus on. And then it came on my Facebook feed, and I was just watching. Ray, this is another side story. Ray just played an entire every game season with the New York Yankees and MLB The Show, the video game.
Yeah.
Right? And I fell asleep last night watching him do the winter meetings in the game.
It basically, I did all the franchise, all the talking, all the negotiations, and So
by the way, I'm really glad I fell asleep because it was super boring.
My Sabre guys I have a group of guys that I meet with for Sabre here in South Carolina. We started a group back in November and got a chapter going, and they were talking about the video game stuff, and they're all ready to do it.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting because we're talking about ways to stay sharp during the pandemic. There's actually a lot of pro players. Did a MLB The Show tournament where Blake Snell of the Rays ended up winning the tournament. The Yankees didn't even make the playoffs. Tommy Kahnle, we will hold this against you. But there's it's interesting different ways that sometimes different players and talk about how obviously different. You said there's different ways to stay sharp and you're looking at different things, but you didn't even unpack. But what ways what ways do you see, like, from a lot of different players? Like, what's the commonality of them trying to stay sharp during all this downtime? What was your observations?
I think the biggest thing was staying in good physical shape, making sure that they were finding a gym or ordering weights to their house or just staying in good physical shape. That was some of the things that I saw. And then also just managing their time throwing, making sure that their arms were in good condition. I think it's your arm, you take too much time, it seems like it can go kind of just stagnant quick, and such, having so many unknowns, you wanted to make sure that you were just in that top physical condition.
Mm-hmm. Also, speaking of the inter-squad games lately, I've been watching the Yankees. I've also been watching the Dodgers because I'm here in Los Angeles. So I'm watching those two teams pretty closely. But we're starting to get some fun stories, though, out of all these inter-squad games. We had the ball boy for the Dodgers throw out Chris Taylor at second base because he had to play left field yesterday. You've had Garrett Cole gave up a home run to Miguel Andujar. What are your favorite stories that you're seeing now that the boys of summer are finally starting to take the field again, and what are you seeing now that we are only a couple of weeks away from meaningful games being played?
Well, I have to admit, I missed the live stream scrimmage yesterday, and I was not happy with myself because I had lessons. I was doing some youth lessons, and I thought maybe I could get a replay, and I'm still looking to see if I could get a replay of it. But I've been mostly checking the rosters, and it looks like everybody is just enjoying themselves. Everybody seems really loose. You see a lot of smiles. You pull up the whatever social media is there, and I know social media can give you one side, but it just seems like, to me, I get this real Sandlot feel, right? That they're really enjoying this time. It just doesn't seem like it's really over just over controlled at the moment, even though we have all these protocols, right? To me, it looks like they're out there playing baseball. And so that's my biggest takeaway from what I'm seeing out there.
Yeah. You mentioned,
we've talked to a few, it's okay, Ray, it's my bad. We've talked to a few athletes. And this is the common theme with them is they know what's going on, and they know kind of what's at stake, and they definitely know the fan perspective in terms of that, just the people need it, right? They know that. So I think that speaks to what you're saying, because how are you going to be on that field and not have a good time right now with everything that's going on in the world, right? I'll tell you a funny story too about the game I was watching today. There's a guy out in right field, and he's catching everything. He's making these huge plays. I don't know who this is. I'm like, who is this? Is this some rookie we called up? And like about half an inning went through, or a couple innings. And finally the announcer goes, and that's the Phillies coach out there. And just one of the assistant coaches is out there playing right field. Which, you don't think that's going to be what's going on. You think it's all the players out there, but it makes sense because of the roster size. But
yeah, I did see one of the games ended in a tie.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. When I read it, I was like, I don't like that.
No.
Obviously with the rule with a runner on second, I was curious to see how that will play out. That's a rule you see a lot in international fast pitch, which usually means that the short game's in play.
Yeah. I was going to say, what were your thoughts on baseball implementing that rule that's typically in softball and extra innings to kind of make sure that we don't have 18-inning, 19-inning marathons, which obviously are possible typically?
Honestly, my first thought was like, oh man, now they're going to say, look, we let the girls play, and look, now their rules change. They're going to make us bunt. I think, obviously there's been some analytics done to try to keep the game within a certain time. And I really didn't realize there was that many tie ball games. I inquired about them. Like, are there really that many ties? And they're like, yeah. And so I guess you need to do something. And I think if you're going to try it out, now's the time, everything
Yeah.
else is kind of, being, everything's different right now, right? In 2020. So I think if it's one of those things that you want to have a test run with, go ahead. I know this year, I'm sorry.
No, I'm
I
sorry. I
know
interrupted
this year
you.
I was going to we were going to have the automated umpire in the league that I was going to be in. And so that was going to be new for me. Why not? Right? Let's try it out, since 2020 seems to be the year of some different things.
Yeah, I almost tempted fate earlier and said, well, 2021 will be better. And I was like, let me not say anything like that right now. You never know. Another big, we talked about this with all sports, that this is really an opportunity to try some new things. And obviously every single major sports league is doing something different. And we expect the NFL to do the same at some point, but it's a good chance to try something. And one of the big things that is being tried is obviously having the DH in the National League. Which I, as a National League fan, I have no problem with this. This is something I think should have been changed a long time ago, but that's just one person's opinion. Obviously, how do you feel about the DH being league-wide, and do you think that it's going to improve the quality of the game this year?
I like a DH. We've had it in the game of fast pitch, and so to see it league-wide in baseball, I think will be a good thing. Certainly something that gives a little more strategy to the game. And I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, we'll see. My guess is that this is going to be the MLB's excuse to just keep it in moving forward, because it's going to be in. I mean, it depends on what happens, but as a good friend of mine has always said, it's like there's nothing worse than rallying and then your pitcher comes up.
People enjoy the offensive part of the game, right? And when you have more offense in the game or more offensive power in the game, usually the DH is usually somebody who can generate power or bring in RBIs, right? So I think, anytime you get that, you're going to have more fan engagement because everybody likes that long ball, right?
Yeah.
Chicks dig the long ball. That's the old saying, right?
Yeah, and I do too, to be fair. But here's where I want to go now. So again, as Ray said, we're a couple weeks away from the season. One of the tragedies of this season that's not spoken about nearly enough is the loss of minor league baseball for the entire year, and that may be literally thousands of players, coaches, fans, everything. And again, understandable why it's not happening from both a financial and from a health point of view. But, that's a realm you were going to be involved with, and I understand you're staying ready. I mean, how do you weather that hit? How are the players weathering that hit? And like you said, for the major league players, it's staying loose and making sure that you're athletic. Other players looking at entire year off from baseball. Some people will not be able to recover from that. So, what is your advice? What's your approach? What's your mindset, knowing that there's not going to be any MILB this year?
Well, it certainly is disappointing. And I truly think it's going to be a time where, there's kind of a weeding out process. Obviously, the people that can weather through this will remain in baseball. And that's always the tough thing when you go through, tragedy, right? You can't go through it without being changed in some capacity. So I truly believe it's going to be up to a lot of individuals to be able to make the choice to say, I'm going to get through this and be better, because there's certainly going to be hardship. I will have to say the Cardinals have done an amazing job of just taking care of, their staff and their players. And I imagine they're going to do everything they can to just continue taking care of this great family that we have. And I know that, with that each club is going to have their own way they're going to handle things. So we are kind of in a time of wait right now as, just the chain of command works down to, our position of, what's next. And so we're just in a time of wait. And during this time of wait, I know what I'm doing, and I'm trusting that my colleagues and, the players are doing the same. They're staying ready, and they're finding productive ways to just remain ready.
Can you give us an example, if possible, of what the Cardinals organization has done for you and the players. And the reason I'm asking is this, is that most of the time ownership management is painted with a negative light in times like this. Because of the owners, they're the financial backers. And I find that more often than not, this is not true of every team, but most teams typically do the right thing, and they get very little credit, very little press about the little things that they do, about, reaching out. So are there, if you can talk about it, if you can, I understand, but are there specific examples of what the Cardinals organization has done that have impacted you or made you feel like, hey, I still matter here, I'm not being forgotten? I think it's an important information for multiple reasons. One, for the sports fans, but also for business owners that listen to this too, because it gives ideas about how they can use this to utilize towards their teams as well.
I think just it starts with the commitment to communicate to the people who make everything work. And we've just had a great consistency, I'm tongue-tied a little bit, a great consistency with communication, right? And that they're just communicating is the first step. And then communicating, just how they're going to take care of us. And, making sure that we're financially secure, we have our benefits, et cetera. The other thing is too, just making sure that we have one voice. And so anything further than that, I cannot elaborate on. Number one, I don't know. And number two, we're just trying to have a one voice from the top down.
Beautifully answered, and again, totally understand. I think it's a fair answer. Now let me switch gears here now, because this is kind of where we're at with the pause and the baseball about to start. And obviously, Ray and I wish you nothing. I'm not going to wish you luck, because I don't believe in wishing for luck, because I think that means you're out of control. But we can't wait to see you thrive in whatever role you're in. Now, I do want to ask you about the Cardinals, though, the team that you're employed by, because we had this great documentary this last summer called Long Gone Summer. All about Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, the home run race of the late 90s.
98,
A little bit of Ken Griffey Jr., not enough, but a little bit. A, did you see that? B, what were your takeaways? And C, what's it like working in – I mean, every baseball organization has a history. And except for Ray's Yankees, which he would get to me if I didn't say this, after the Yankees stories and lore and everything, really the Cardinals are the next team up. What is that experience like? So again, back to the Long Gone Summer, and then we can jump into the heritage of the Cardinals.
I did get a chance to watch it. I saw that it was coming out. I missed it when it came out. I did get a chance to watch it. Went back and watched it, and just took some notes too, just so I could answer some questions. For me personally, it just introduced some more history of the Cardinal program and the rivalry with the Cubs. I think it's beautiful. It reminds me of the South Carolina-Clemson rivalry. And so long-standing and kind of ruthless, but very good, very good. Take away the controversy that's there. I thought it was another great example of just getting lost in the game and not just for, Sosa and McGwire competing and giving, the fans something that was memorable and exciting. But the fans were able to get lost in that game as well. And I thought back to those years, and I was still playing ball. I was actually playing ball. I got married. I was training with the U.S. team during that time. So I would only get glimpses of it, And I was thinking, like, how awesome would it have been to be a fan during that time? And, it was nostalgic. It was a great demonstration of the power of belief, because, regardless of that controversy that's there, it still took commitment and the power of belief for these athletes still to perform to that level, right? For that period of time. And, I can't weigh in on all of I'm not taking a side on any of that in the sense that honestly, I think I lack still a lot of pertinent information to truly understand the ins and outs that went on regarding that controversy. However, I look at it and I'm like, it's baseball. It has drama, it has romance, and it's baseball. And I think we pulled a lot of good out of all that went on there. Number one, we could give the fans this amazing experience. Number two, it brought awareness to really what was going on, the different protocols, and what really needed to be addressed within the game, if it were, things were truly as rampant as was noted in the documentary, and then also just really paying attention to recovery. My time with the British national team taught me a completely different approach to recovery, being in the Europe. Our coach was Australian, and recovery and athletic training over there was so different compared to what's here in America, or at least my experience here in America. And I think we've probably looked at recovery efforts, a completely different way to be able to avoid some of the things that, were being done in an effort to gain an advantage. And so if we can pull that kind of good out of it, then I think that we've done a good job moving forward. You can't get better without doing, you're going to have both the good and the bad that come with it. So, I just think as the game progresses, you have to expect there's going to be that drama and that controversy and conflict, along with, the romance.
I'll tell you this too, that, again, with the PED stuff aside and the asterisks aside, it's part of baseball history, no matter how you look at it. Ray and I did joke on a show that no matter what anyone thinks about the PED side, we looked at McGuire and we said, really only one of those home runs, the last one, actually, the one that broke the record, not the last one, the one that broke the record.
62, yeah.
That was his shortest one. So those things are going out no matter what. We were joking about that. That actually made us feel a lot better about the situation. Because most of those are going out no matter what. You mentioned twice now working in England in British baseball. What's funny is I worked in England for 3 years in English ice hockey. And you said you had an Australian coach for the British baseball team. I had a Russian coach for the British baseball team. And then we had – apparently both teams had American coaches on there as well. One of the things I wanted to ask you, now that you brought it up, I had no idea you had done that, is, again, you said it, working in kind of Europe or England, it's a totally different sporting world. It's a totally different mentality. I learned a ton being over there. But baseball and hockey, when you think of England, are not the first thoughts that come to your mind. And I was fascinated being there and seeing that these athletes and the fans are just as passionate as anywhere else in the world. There's just not as many of them. Right. So was that the same experience that you had there? And I love that an Aussie manager was coaching British players with you. I think I always find that.
Yeah, she was British Australian, Australian British, however you want to.
Depends on the day, right?
Yeah, and actually she was Welsh. She would get on to me if I didn't say that. She was actually Welsh.
They will. Yes. I made that mistake myself.
And she was a physio, and her name was Rachel Walkies, Rachel Walkies, and she's a physio. And so she just really taught a lot about how to approach the athletes. And our training room, the athletes were in there all the time. They did a lot of preventative things, and when they took the field the next day, they were feeling good. And I really liked that approach. And they just recovered a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And so I imagine, with all the resources that Major League Baseball has now since the 80s and the early 90s, all of that, there's a lot addressed, especially with the biomechanics the analytics to support all of that data. There's just some amazing things probably going on regarding recovery.
Well, if you're going to make $100 million investment in a player, you probably should invest in them recovering. And
it goes beyond just an ice pack.
Yeah, right. If you're going to put that much money into a human being, you hope they take care of themselves, but you got to do everything that you can too. Let's switch gears a little bit because we've been talking sports the whole time. And unfortunately for the episode for you, it's not called Sports by Geeks. It's Geeks Who Like Sports. So the word on the street is that you're a Lord of the Rings fan. Is that true?
I do like Lord of the Rings. Yes, my father had the whole book collection when we were young, and he would read to us out of it. And then he was so excited when the movies came out, and but just alongside the Lord of the Rings, where it was Star Wars. We grew up watching Star Wars.
Nice.
And being in California, just the whole movie industry was something. We just enjoyed our movies, especially our sci-fi and, our Star Wars. And I watched The Mandalorian, love that. And I've got two boys.
Season 2's on its way.
Yeah, I have a 17-year-old and a soon-to-be 20-year-old boy. And so we've seen a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek and Indiana Jones, all of that. We've really, truly enjoyed just the imagination is out there. That's what gets me. That's the one thing I love about the movies, the series, the trilogy, all of that.
Well, and I can tell you this, with love and faith aside, you're raising him right if you're watching Indiana Jones and all that. I mean, that's priorities. No, but I love it because I tell you what, it's exciting to me that you did it. By the way, The Mandalorian is what happens when your physio lets you recover and trains you to be good, and then the last few episodes of the films are when you just kind of put the ice pack on it, right? Yeah. And just go like, hey, episode 9, get back out there, finish the saga, and then you get what you got. Right, The Mandalorian took its time. It trained, right? It's focused on and now it gets another season. So just in case anybody out there needed a sports metaphor for that. And then in addition to the films, when we asked you in our kind of pre-interviews, you talked a little bit about that you did do some gaming in the past. And
I think that growing up, I remember getting my first Atari. I think it was really for my father, but
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I remember getting
all the games I buy are for my kids.
Yes, so I think it was great with that joystick and that button. That was great. That was about my extent there. But when we would go to the arcade, I loved pinball. I can't tell you a name of a pinball machine, but I loved the pinball. To me, it was a lot like hitting. You had to get the timing of everything just right.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed that the most.
I miss arcades a lot. I part of me secretly hopes that there's some retro action that brings arcades back. And people go, oh, they're out there. I'm like, no, not an arcade where it's $5 to play a game. I mean, 25 cents, and I can play as long as I want.
Or that there's so many options and you can't master all of them.
Yeah, right. You know what I miss? I miss that sound when you walk in the arcade of all the games at once. Yeah. The pinball machine, the arcade machines, the ticket machines, and I guess the only thing close to it's really kind of a casino, which is not the best place to be, obviously, but.
Well, there's Dave and Buster's, and there's a lot of places out here in LA have actually thrived on barcades, adding alcohol to it, which is to me great. Yeah. I'm all for that. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's a lot of really big arcades still out here in LA. But
Dave and Buster's is where I go when I need a nap, Ray. So my kids can just go.
Yeah, you go. Exactly. I was gonna say the barcade's more for me. You guys with underage children can't really go to the barcade probably too regularly.
Dave and Buster's right on the harbor here in Philadelphia. Once a year, I get to sleep. That's what it is right now.
Yeah, we have a Dave and Buster's here in Columbia. I don't get to it often, but I think my kids do.
Nice.
There you go. So Tina, let me ask you this. I know you're not in a place where you can tell us anything specific about moving forward in the game, but can you give us a broad moving forward, what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, and just, like you said, you have something set in your mind. Can we get into that at all? Or
actually, when I spoke with Tyrone Brooks, one of my first questions to him was, do these positions have opportunity to advance? Because I'm making a career change and I want to make sure that I have opportunity to advance. In which direction that is, I wasn't sure at the time. However, I knew that coming into baseball, I wanted to learn from the ground up. So from scouting with the amateurs and bird dog scouting, for no pay, knowing what that is like, because if you can commit to that, you can commit to then the things that are going to demand a lot more of you, because it's about the passion you have for the sport. And so I would love to be a manager one day. I love the game aspect of the sport. I love the strategy. I love being part of helping, and I love development and the actual execution of the game. I love seeing players do that, and I like to help facilitate that. It's not about being a leader, but more a facilitator. I know one of the definitions of the word facilitate means to make easy. And so, taking that approach, going out there to manage, I want to be in a position to always make the game easy so that the players can just go out there and, again, get lost in the game.
That is a super eloquent and awesome answer.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead, Ray.
I was going to say,
I do have a field voice, though. I know as I'm speaking here, that's one voice. I do have my field voice.
I believe it. Yeah. I don't want to scare Ray. So
we've all got that voice. There's the interview calm voice, and there's play-by-play voice or coach voice. Very, very, very different. So, but I think Lee, unless you got something else, I think that's actually a great point.
Just to comment on what you just said, I remember one time when I was coaching, somebody came to watch me coach a game, and they said, and this was said to me when I played too. They said, like, you look different when you're doing it. I was like, what do you mean it looks different? Like, your face looks different. Like, your face physically transforms to another person. And I didn't know what they meant, because this was before, like, there were cell phones everywhere. And then later on, someone actually did take a video of me. I'm like, wow, I really don't look like this when I'm just don't look like this when I'm coaching. I just think it's a different human. So yeah, but before we jump off here, I do want to ask you, kind of like a rapid fire, in baseball, favorite memory. And I'm sure there's a lot, but what sticks out when someone asks you that question?
Well, one was both of them kind of came as a fan, right? I had a chance to finally get out to a ball game after I'd lost my husband. I had my 2 children with me. We went out to a ball game, and Dave Roberts happened to be playing there. I didn't even know he was going to be there, and he was a friend from back in my high school days. And he came over, and it was like just a nice little short reunion. And he gave us tickets to come and continue to watch the series. To me, it was a demonstration of really the relationships that were made in baseball. And they were made way back in high school. So for me personally, that was a moment that stands out to me of, just baseball welcomed me back into the game, The second one was I had a chance to sit and watch one of Barry Bonds' home runs in Atlanta Braves Stadium, and from home plate. And that was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome to see that.
Yeah, I'll spare you ours because Ray has 26 of these moments and I have 2. And I wasn't alive for half of mine. So no, but that is a beautiful moment. And it goes back to say, that we preach this, that it's really not what you do as much as who you do it with. And that goes from the professional baseball ranks all the way down to the person that's taking garbage out. Like, not that that's beneath anybody. I'm just saying that it's who you work with. I also love that you're able to talk about the goal setting that you put forward for yourself, because I think that's a super important thing. Ray and I talk about this all the time, but if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get anywhere. Right. And you know where you're going. And then, again, you mentioned the tragedy of your husband and the way you were able to refocus and move forward with 2 children, which, God bless you, with all of that, obviously. And, that's going to be my last question, actually, is with the kids and a career change and going for this, right? You're going for something that is, again, it's a glass ceiling on many fronts. Where does that strength come from? You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah.
Well, I have a strong faith. It's been tested and refined throughout the years. And I rely on that. I rely on being a Jesus freak.
That's a strong answer. That's fair. And the fact that you have faith, I think, is so important. I think that's something people underestimate, that doesn't matter what the faith is, right? As long as you have some form of faith to get you through those times. Well, Tina, I'm going to say this again. I'm not going to wish you luck because you don't need it. All right. And like I said, luck is not the type of thing you wish on someone. I can't wait to watch you succeed. I can't wait to see where you go. I can't wait to see glass ceilings be broken. And I think it's a testament to baseball, to the Cardinals, and to you, that you are who you are and you are where you're at. And I think that that's an amazing story, and it was an amazing interview. And I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Ray.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Christina, so much for coming on this edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interviews. Again, be sure to check us out on Facebook. The podcast can be heard wherever podcasts are heard. And for Lee, I'm Ray. Again, Christina, thank you for joining us. This has been Geeks Who Like Sports.